Alright, we are back for part 3 of our Space Invaders game, and here we're going to look at developing our shooting mechanism as well as creating our meteor object. And again, we're going to just really create the object now and look at how we can destroy it, but we're not going to look at how we constantly regenerate it in this part. Okay, so we need to go back and add a few sprites. Let's go back and add a meteorite sprite. So we'll load a sprite. We can just use meteorite large. And we'll call this meteorite. Oops. Sprite. Okay. We're going to also add a bullet for shooting, and so we're going to go there. But for the bullet, let's go back and we're going to go up and look at our maze platform. This is different than the mazes we had, but they have a bunch of bullets in here, so we're going to use bullet up to fire up and hit OK there. And then we're also going to go back and add a explosion for this as well, and we're going to use the explosion sequence again from the maze platform. There's this explosion strip 7, and we're going to use that for right now. And you may want to play around with this a little bit. Explosion sprite. Use different explosions. We're actually going to use this explosion for 2 different things, so you may want to have this one for one and a different one there for the other one. But for the purpose of the tutorial, we're going to keep it pretty simple. Okay, let's go back and add some sounds as well. We haven't put any sounds in yet. I'm going to just use a couple basic sounds. So if I go back up to our main GameMaker 8 and look at our sounds here, we have a cannon sound, I believe, right here. And if I play this, I actually get what sounds more like an explosion. And so I'm going to stop that. I'm going to call this my explosion sound. Okay. And then I'm going to add another sound for my gunshots. And I'm going to use this boom shot sound. You can hear this one here. And we won't loop it, so it won't sound quite like that. Okay. So now I have my sounds, I have my sprites, I need to create my objects. So let's go ahead and create our bullet object. And we use our bullet sprite. Okay, so we're going to add an event here, which is our create event, and when we create it, we're going to set our vertical speed. Now remember, the bullets are starting at the bottom where we shoot the ship and going up to the top, and so we have to go backwards, and so decreasing in speed. So that's going to be vertical speed is -8. We want it to move relatively quick. We can speed this up and slow it down depending on how you want to play it, but we're going to use this here. Okay. And we're also going to add a step event because when we get to the top, we need to remove our bullet. We don't want to have all these bullets just continuing to fly in space. It'll start to slow us down when we get too many. So we actually want to destroy the instance when we get to the top. So we're going to do that by testing our variable. And we're going to be looking at the Y position. And even though zeros are top, we want to make sure the whole bottom of the bullet clears the bullet. And since these are 16, we're going to say if value is less than or smaller than -16, I'm going to put -20 just to be safe to get the whole thing off. Then at that point, if that's the case, we go back over and destroy the instance. Okay, that's all we need for our bullet object. Now let's go back over to our main object. Okay, so far we just have our movements, and now we want to add our key events here. So we're going to essentially, when we create this object, we're going to create a variable. So let's go add a create event. And the idea here is we don't want the person to be able to just constantly shoot. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add a variable called cooldown. So if we go under controls, I have variables here. So I'm going to set variable, we'll call it cooldown, to value -1. And we're going to say anything less than 0 allows us to shoot. So when we create it, we want this variable to be in the position where they can actually shoot right away. Okay, now what we're going to do is go back to add another event, and this is going to be a keyboard space event. So when you hit the space bar, we're going to shoot. So basically, this is going to come back into an if statement. So test variable. We're going to say variable cooldown is smaller than 0. If that's the case, then we're going to say we can shoot. Okay. We'll put a block out there. And what happens then is we come over to our main, and we're going to create an instance of our bullet. And the location is going to be relative to our current position. And so we want to try creating this just above where we are. So let's start at x equals 0, y equals 0. That should hopefully create it relatively close to where we are, but we're going to have to test it out and see when we do that. Okay, and then here after we create it, we're also going to then go back and set our variable. So we're going to set variable cooldown to a value of +10. Okay, and that's basically going to stop us from shooting again, and we can play with this number a little bit as we go. Okay, now I'm going to add one more event here, and that's going to be a step event. And what we're going to do with step event is we're going to take our variable here and set variable cooldown equal to -1 relative. And so essentially every step we take 1 off of cooldown. When we shoot, we set cooldown to 10, and then we continue taking 1 off each time and allowing us to shoot that way. All right, let's go back and test this out. One of the things we want to look at is where does that bullet actually come out of. And that looks pretty good. Seems to be coming right out. If you look, it comes out a little bit too low. We may want to move Y up a little bit so that it's not coming out of the center of our guy. And you can see now if I lay down on the keyboard, I am getting shots roughly every little bit, and that looks like a good pace. So I'm just going to go back into my main on the space, create instance of. Let's move this Y to, let's say, -10 and check that out. We'll check it out the next time we go through from there. Alright, so instead of continuing on with the meteorite in this video, we'll pick that one up in our next step.